This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
To the highway in a brand new day. Over the rainbow, gotta let it go. So fast to finger down. Dance tonight together. Here everyone is singing. 你看到我就怕，头皮发麻，我的手。
Welcome back to Open the Voice Gate for October 4th, 2022. We are members of the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. You can find us on the Voices of Wrestling podcast feed or our own dedicated podcast feed on all podcast platforms and applications. You can follow us on Twitter at Open Voice Gate. If you'd like to donate to the show, click the link in the show notes. It'll take you to our redcircle.com landing site, and you click the red box that says Sponsors Podcast, and you can set up a one-time or recurring donation. No obligation whatsoever, but we would like to thank all of our previous donors. I'm one of your hosts. It's your old pal, Iron Mike Spears. Joined alongside, as always, Case Lowe. And Case, how are you doing on this Tuesday night?
I'm stressed out as always, but it's good to be back. Thank you to everybody who listened to and enjoyed last week's episode. The feedback on that was very nice. As soon as we stopped recording, I asked Mike off the air. I said, do you think I made my point clear? I'm not sure people are going to understand what I was talking about, but it seems like people did. And so if we have new listeners, I'm delighted that you're here. And if you're somebody that listens every week, welcome back.
Yeah, thanks for all the kind words about that. That was something where I think we kind of roughly talked beforehand, and in case I just let you to kind of take the wheel a little bit and chipping in where it did. So if anything, that the majority of that goes towards you versus me on that.
Well, thank you for that. I, Mike, we're a partnership. I couldn't do this without you. I will say, if you're a new listener, if last week caught your ears for whatever reason and you weren't totally sure a lot of what we were talking about, there is a video that got uploaded to YouTube today, and I will have Mike put it in the show description. The man known as Guts Dozer, which is a top tier online username, created a little how to get into Dragongate in under 10 minutes YouTube video. Very well done. His other video on Masquerade was also incredibly informative, but this one is great. If you heard this, if the Voices of Wrestling flagship guys put it on your radar and you listened and thought, I'd like to know more about this, I would recommend that video. Under 10 minutes, it really gets you caught up to speed on what you need to know to maybe listen to this podcast in a way that would make sense going forward.
Yeah, and it's something that it seems like that Gower or whoever like figured out the fair use thing. So that's something that I think is really good to have like a constant resource, because it's just tough. Like, we've talked about that kind of stuff before, and ultimately we get to a certain point and we get distracted. But seeing what Gut Dozer has done there, like that's something that I think that I think like Dragongate, like especially if like fans, like onboarding is something I talk about a lot in just normal life, sadly, but it's something that it helps lessen the curve, I would say, and anything I think that lessens the curve to get more people to watch Dragongate, I think is the best. So yeah, I'll make sure to have them in the show notes.
Yeah, I completely agree. This is a time to jump on as Noah continues to do whatever they're going to do. All Japan is what they are, which is, I will say, this is the premier podcast for All Japan Korakuen Hall attendance reports, because for all of the things that have gone down in wrestling this year, from the AEW media scrum scandal to wrestlers jumping ship and whatnot, I think the single most entertaining story in wrestling this year has been that All Japan continues to crush it in Korakuen Hall. Their most recent show was 821 fans, and I think the one before that was like 907 or something. Yeah, this September 19th All Japan show, headlined by Miyahara versus Naoya Nomura for the Triple Crown title. 919 fans in Korakuen Hall. And I'm just fascinated by this because it's not a promotion that feels particularly hot. I don't know a ton of people that talk about All Japan, but they are beating Noah and DDT pretty easily in that building, and I think that's super interesting. But if you're not into DDT, if you're not into Noah, if you're not into All Japan, obviously Dragongate is the promotion that you can turn to, and hopefully between last week's podcast and that introduction video and what we're going to talk about today, we can make that onboarding process a little bit easier.
Yeah, so there was no live shows on the network this week, so we are going a little bit off script. We do have some of the card for Thursday's Korakuen show that has been announced, and we do have, following up from our bigger conversation from last week, we do have people listed for that show that we talked about. So we'll talk about that. The U.S. excursion stuff. We're coming up on a pretty big weekend, like a series of weeks for Dragongate in USA. I know Case and I we've caught up what we can over the last few days. I had a hurricane roll through a case. Luckily,
okay, all right. Oh, I guess you can't watch Dragongate. You had a hurricane to deal with. Whatever.
I mean, it's something that if you listen to Music of the Mat here on the award-winning Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network, I have done shows through a hurricane. Now, let's be clear. By the time Ian was a threat for me and where it was not really a thing, but it was something that I could have podcasted through a hurricane. So, yeah.
You know, I haven't listened to your most recent appearance on Music of the Mat because, as I've pointed out on this show before, never been invited. Despite working in the music industry, somehow never got that Music of the Mat invite. I like Andrew Rich. I think he's great. He's a robot. Don't have that invite. Can't believe it.
Well, Case, I will say this. I did discover a lot about John Underdown for this episode.
I don't know who that is. Should I?
The English vocalist for basically everything that comes out for Dragongate themes over the last 5 years.
Gotcha.
6 years,
all
really.
right. That's okay.
You know the annoying Tri Vanguard theme that I always made a joke about how it was like sounded like a straight out of Sonic Adventure.
Unfortunately, I do remember anything about Tri Vanguard, which is unfortunate. I do remember that theme song.
Yeah. You remember how it was just like very much like a Sonic the Hedgehog like theme? Funny thing about that, you could discover more about that if you listen to Music of the Mat.
Did you guys discuss Diamante's theme being a ripoff of Linkin Park's Paper Cut?
No, we did not talk about that.
Okay.
That's something that sadly we got. I was so excited about talking about John Underdown and what I discovered going on the Sonic fan wikis, which are a very dangerous place, Case.
I'm not going to do that. I'm not a dork, so don't worry about that. Can I ask you a non-Dragongate related question before we spend 90 minutes talking about Dragongate?
Yeah, let's do it.
Do you have opinions on the career, life, and times of Antonio Inoki?
Well, God, that's a loaded question. Do I have thoughts about Antonio Inoki? Of course I have thoughts about Antonio Inoki. Yeah, man. Well, it's something that I think, like, the kind of figure Inoki is kind of like the last of a bygone era. And I think like that's like the one thing that's like really like taken me aside is like, okay, he was like him and Giant Baba were like promoted as Ricky Dozen's like disciples, and now like that link is gone to like the father of Japanese pro wrestling, and that's like that's like a takeaway that I haven't really heard or seen so far about that. Like I feel like that there is like Inoki was like, yeah, he wasn't really a part of wrestling anymore, but like he still was that figure that like was basically since the advent of pro wrestling in Japan. And I think that that's something that it has to be like now like down to like does Ricky Dozen's son even wrestle anymore unless it's with his bad son?
What's his son's name? Was that the Chikara kid?
Yeah, Chikara, and Mitsuo Momoda is Ricky Dozen's son.
It looks like he has not wrestled in about a year.
Yeah, because he was one of the guys that was like the real old timers that came over, and like the Haruka Eigen stuff too. You know, like he was doing that, but I mean, like he might be like one of the last links now to like that generation and like the tangential link to like the beginning of pro wrestling in Japan now. And I think that that's like a very profound loss in a way.
It looks like Chikara wrestled Shima in a series of 3 singles matches, one that lasted 5 seconds, one that lasted 10 seconds, and one that lasted 4 minutes and 55 seconds on the March 23rd, 2021 PPP Tokyo show. Mike, what can you tell the folks at home about PPP Tokyo?
Oh boy, Case. Tangentially like related to like bikini models, AV industry. Like that's like the one thing that like I kind of picked up on about them. Case, do you have other things about PPP that I'm not saying?
No, I don't know what that is, but it seems like something you have a spreadsheet about hidden away on your hard drive somewhere. So I just assumed it's
someone has to keep track of all of the micro indies in Tokyo. Just because
Mike's gonna die, and I'm gonna get his next of kin to be like, "Hey, I don't know what secret base is, but he has a bunch of notes in here for you about it." I'm like, "Oh fuck, I gotta deal with this now."
Most people would get like the wedding chest. You'll get my cursed dragon system ravings. That's like, yeah, no, Dad had this in a Foot Locker in like a shed and said, anything happens to me, you need to go find Case Low and give this Foot Locker to. But it feels like there's a bunch of books in there. It's like, why are there all these notes about El Dorado?
Yeah. It's the Naoki Tanizaki alternate timeline. It's 90 pages of what would have happened had he never left.
For both departures, 90 pages on each one.
Exactly. So you get it. I'm curious about the Inoki thing because I very rarely find any need to participate in like widespread discourse anymore, just because most conversations annoy me. But I have really enjoyed learning more about Inoki, reading people learning about Inoki, and even as we record this, rewatching some old 80s New Japan stuff throughout the week. I am so excited. I've said this on the podcast before that for as aggravating as Dave Meltzer can be, especially this year, given what we cover, for as aggravating as Dave can be, there's like a list of guys that I really need to die before Dave dies because I need to read their obituaries, and Inoki was one of those guys. So I'm super excited to read the Observer this week. Have you read the Ali versus Inoki book that Josh Gross wrote a few years ago?
I have had that on my Kindle for years.
It's excellent. I read it. I read it 2 summers ago. I thought it was really well done as somebody that is obviously a big wrestling fan and a very novice boxing fan, if you will. I don't know the exact qualifier to use there, but the history of wrestling, the way it's painted, with wrestling in the 50s and 60s, and then, Inoki sort of getting his own little biography throughout that book. I think it's really well done. I think you would enjoy it. I think most people that are into wrestling on the sort of level of the fact that they know what this podcast is and are listening to me right now, if you haven't read Ali versus Inoki, I would really recommend it because I have become, over the years, a huge Ali mark, and I read that in the summer of 2020 when I was at home in the midst of COVID watching old Ali fights, and I read the book and thoroughly enjoyed it. So I would highly recommend that, and I would highly recommend, Inoki matches or not, spending some time with 80s New Japan this week.
Yeah, it's something that like Inoki is such a singular figure, and that's a word I use too often that I've been trying to pare back so it doesn't lose its meaning. But Inoki really was like you like look at it, and now how much of the stuff that like is written about him is actually stuff that's true is left to interpretation. But I mean, like this is a guy that regardless of like how he like the last 25 years of his life, like that's a life lived. Like, yes.
There's no one like him. The comparison that I saw somebody throw out there that I really liked was it's Japan's Hulk Hogan, but if Hulk Hogan had Donald Trump level clout. And it was like, oh wow, that's probably the most accurate American comp you can get to who is Antonio Inoki.
Yeah, like I like that a lot actually, and it's such like a fascinating thing. Like also, a book that I've spent time with a couple times and I've read through a couple times is Stan Hansen's autobiography, and because he has interactions with both Inoki and Baba, like those are like the two figures. Like whenever you talk about like, oh, it's Hulk Hogan, but with like the cultural touchstones of Donald Trump, like his natural foil was Giant Baba, someone who just was very quiet, unassuming, and was like this impeccable gentleman kind of like figure that like fostered his own theory of pro wrestling. And it's kind of like, wow, now that's kind of done. And yeah, neither Inoki nor Baba have been relevant to like Major League Pro Wrestling for like 25 years, but like it does feel like as much of an era has ended. And that's something that that like, especially like going through and like reading stuff and like watching old Inoki things, it's just kind of like reminds you of like, okay, like this is the guy that in a lot of ways spanned this time. I mean, like Japanese MMA, like all this stuff here is like, maybe he's not like directly responsible for it, but like the through line through like 40 years of pro wrestling in one of the dominant ecosystems passed away. And it's something that I think it's that I wonder if people like existentially come to terms with within the industry. You know,
it's what I've been trying to think about this week because, you know, it's he fought Muhammad Ali, which is insane. But to your point about it really being the end of an era, like Fujinami was his young boy, but Fujinami's not a part of that era. He was in the JWA dojo, but I think he debuts in New Japan. He actually might have worked a few JWA matches right before the split. But anyways, like we don't consider Fujinami to be this like, we don't consider him to be a descendant of Ricky Dozan, even if he's really only 2 degrees removed. So Inoki was the last guy to that era. And when we lose Fujinami and Hamada and Fujiwara and some of these first term New Japan guys, that'll be the loss of another era. And luckily we have a lot of written history and documentation and footage of those guys, but it's a monumental loss that even though I personally am not like, I wouldn't consider myself a fan of Inoki or obviously Inokiism because I'm not into irony, but it's a loss that has just made me think a lot about the history of Japanese wrestling this week, and I wanted your thoughts on it.
Yeah, and it's something that like in a lot of ways, like you brought up like Dave, like there's certain people like this. Dave's like, we know that Dave does not keep these on file too. That's like,
no, it's like, why would Dave, like if I was Dave, I would be dedicating time out of my week every week on the Vince obit, the Hogan obit, the Austin obit, Choshu, Tenru, which unfortunately, that Tenru
The
one,
Rock, like people like that. Yeah.
But no, we know that Dave cracked his knuckles at 5 p.m. last Friday and was like, okay, here's the next 6 days of my life figured out. I'm going to be writing about Inoki nonstop.
Well, like, I guess like the question about that I wanted, like saying that is, I wonder, and I want to kind of get your opinion on this, like how drastically different, knowing this about Dave Meltzer, that Inoki's bio will be this week versus if something happened in the bio and he passed away 15 years ago or even 2012. Like, I feel like it's 2 drastically different things because of the passage of time. And, you know, sadly, the last 10 years, like Inoki just has not been that kind of figure. Or if he's been that kind of figure, it's him doing stuff like going to North Korea without diplomatic approval, you know? So I wonder about that. And I was wondering at like how differently do you think it would be?
Well, I don't know. I'm glad that it happened now that he's out of the spotlight because, again, it's been really interesting for people that, you know, people that I talk to in either the Voice of Wrestling Discord or that I see on Twitter who I enjoy conversing with, but are also like, I don't know anything about this Inoki guy. And again, it's not like I'm a big fan of him, but it's like, it's Inoki, and I'm fascinated by the guy. So I like that he's been out of the spotlight because I think it's given people a chance to go, wait, I don't know. I know he's important, but I don't know who he is. And now they're finding out all of this stuff, which has just been great. I would recommend the Observer from the week he retired. That's April 19. I think that's the second issue in April of 1998. And then if you haven't read the August 1996 G1 / Super J Crown Observer, where Dave basically goes through the history of the first 25 years of New Japan and then does these legendary G1 reviews in between paragraphs, those are essential reading this week. I cannot recommend those enough.
I think also, like, and it's not like of the time, but like if you want to like find stuff more recently, like weirdly enough, like Dave wrote like some great stuff about the I'm forgetting what it's called, the Collision in Korea. Like he wrote stuff because of the Vice series. Like I remember like he touched on it a little bit there, but I haven't gone back to see like 95, 96 what he wrote of in that time.
It's really good. I read both of them yesterday and thoroughly enjoyed it. I would also recommend to you, because I know you're not seeking this out on your own, but Dave and Brian did some audio this morning that got clipped and put up on the F4W YouTube channel of talking about a number of Inoki related things, one of which was who's more influential, Inoki versus Baba, which I thought was an interesting conversation. But they go through about 15 minutes worth of Inoki history, his legacy in Pakistan, which I didn't know anything about, and just some other general things that I found to be very interesting. So I for as much as the wrestling media annoys me, both trusted outlets and obviously like Click News with a Z sites, I have really enjoyed the Inoki stuff this week, and I hope it continues throughout the week through Dave's obit, because I'm really excited to read that.
Yeah, no, it's something that first thing in the morning on Friday, I'm gonna pull that up, or hopefully it'll be. He's been publishing it usually about Friday morning my time, so
yes, yeah, about the same, and hopefully it's done, because it takes Dave a while to do some things. I'm still waiting on a New Jack obituary. I don't believe that was ever published, which is a bummer, because that is on the short list of most interesting wrestling obituaries. But nevertheless, I don't believe that one ever made it to press.
Just like the Ray Hall of Fame bio.
God. Thank God Inoki died before Hall of Fame and award season, because we would be getting like the Observer Awards in June of 2023 if Inoki died right when those ballots were due.
That's absolutely true.
Dave is counting them by hand this year, and it's taking a long time to sort out who Mexican MVP is. Oh my God.
Yeah, he just keeps on adding, like makes it more difficult for himself.
He's adding more categories. It's insane.
Yeah. Now it's going to be like by blood type in 5 years, and it's just going to be like, Dave, man, you're like at a certain point you're diluted to the point where you can make the argument already about how much they actually matter, but you keep on adding more and more, and do the original ones matter as much?
Let's talk about this Korakuen Hall show if you don't have anything else on the legend of Antonio Inoki.
I mean, do you want to know how many times I watched the clip of him stopping the IJF match between Luke Gallows and
Biker
the guy? Yeah, one of my only him.
Yeah, that's
slamming chairs, and I think that was Kobe World Hall too.
that clip is better than any of the like Inoki slapping the people in the face. That's just played out to me. Like I've seen those clips too many times. Him stopping the Luke Gallows match is 5 stars. It is so good.
Like let's be honest here. If we want to talk about Inoki over the last 20 years, like that's probably unless you want to get into the political realm, like that is as good a representation of what Inoki kind of is. As a person, like dating back his entire life is. Yeah, no, he's a guy who's going to come out, grab a chair, slam it up against barricades, and stop a match and order a match to go home in his own promotion, and completely bewilder to foreigners.
Learning this week, I think that is like peak Inoki as a personality. Learning this week, and Rich Craich did such a tremendous job over on the flagship Patreon of putting together all of the clean jobs that Inoki did throughout his time in New Japan, and learning that he never lost a singles match to Fujinami, who had been his number 2 since Fujinami debuted in wrestling, filled me with such joy and such laughter, just knowing like for 20 years, Inoki's like, you're next, you're the guy, you're my guy, you're the future face of this promotion. Best I can do is go an hour Broadway with you, brother. I can't put you over. I just assumed at some point Fujinami would have beaten him. That is not the case. He pinned him in tags, but he never pinned him in a singles match, and I think that is so funny.
Well, you number 1s and number 2s don't matter if number 2s beat 1s. I mean, you got a hierarchy there. Antonio understood that.
Yeah. No, Inoki, booking genius. You're right.
Yeah. I mean, exactly. That's precisely what I'm saying. He's never had one bad booking choice in his entire career.
No. It was good that Yuji Nagata got knocked out by the greatest MMA fighter of all time.
Greatest entrance of all time too.
Oh my God, yes.
I'm sorry. Having seen Duran Duran, like Wild Boys is something that I was furious that they did not play Wild Boys that time because I wanted to in my mind do the Lean Heart like intro for Crow Cop.
Is Duran Duran good?
I like them. They're
Okay.
fun.
I was
They're
just
fun.
talking to somebody. I was talking to somebody at work recently who I guess is like a Duran Duran head, like that's his thing, but I don't really trust his music taste, and so I wasn't sure if I was really supposed to buy into that or not. But that might be a worthwhile sit down. I'd like to know if people have top 3 Duran Duran tracks, please send them my way.
Well, Rio, Wild Boys, yeah. I'm blanking on a couple right now.
That's okay, no pressure. We don't have to talk about Duran Duran at this point. I would love to talk about Gate of Victory 2022.
Yeah, let's get to Korakuen. So Korakuen is on Thursday. We just scheduling wise, it kind of worked out this way for us this week. We have already 2 matches announced, like rare Korakuen stuff, and it's really 5 matches announced because we are getting another single match series. This isn't the all-out war. We're not getting Hyo playing coach here, but Natural Vibes versus Z-Brats, KZ, Big Boss Shimizu, UT, Jackie Funky Kamei versus Kai, BB Hulk, Hyo, and Diamante. The match pairings will be decided by lottery, and that could literally be anything from like biting into bread than actually like drawing straws. So who knows how to decide it.
I get super excited about stuff like this. We are 1 year removed from, they did this with RED and Masquerade last year, and it ended with Jason Lee pinning Eita in a singles match, and I adored that. Well, actually, as we close the show with a fun little segment, I don't know if it's going to be fun or not. We might shit on it halfway through, but I plan on bringing up this gimmick that they're doing again later on for our show closing segment. I love stuff like this. It sets Dragongate apart. There's no bad combination of matches here between KZ, Shimizu, UT, and Kamei, and then Kai, Hulk, Hyo, and Diamante. Even like what's the weakest matchup possible here? It's obviously Hulk versus somebody. Is there a Hulk match that you don't want to see?
For 2 different reasons, KZ and Shimizu. KZ, because KZ is a madman and will insist on like doing insane bumps from the apron to the floor, and Hulk's body don't work that way no more.
No, it don't.
Shimizu, because we could see how this match goes, and it can get real bad.
I would prefer they burn Hulk versus Shimizu here, because let Shimizu do like the shoulder blocks where Hulk takes the big twisty bump that he does so well. And
Dancing
then let's
time.
I would rather Hulk wrestle Shimizu so we don't waste KZ, UT, or Kamei in that match, because I'm personally hoping for UT versus Diamante here and KZ versus Kai, and that would leave us with Kamei versus Hyo, which would be excellent. All the possibilities here are good. Again, I think Hulk, these singles matches, it's not like Hulk's going to headline this. It's going to be under 10 minutes. I think he'll be fine. I don't think he'll be exposed. I just think it would be preferable for everybody if he wrestled Shimizu 3 minutes, get in, get out, and then let the flashy guys do their flashy things.
Yeah, I mean, shoulder block, flip cell, dancing time, you cut him off, kick him in the head. Let's get out of here.
Bingo. Yeah, that's it. Let me throw something at you here.
All right.
As maybe not something that we see the immediate aftermath of at this October Korakuen Hall show, but something that I don't know if it's worth pinning on your brain of a bulletin board of a brain rather, but I've seen some tweets, and there's no insider speculation here. There's no real validity to them other than fan theory of wondering if we start to see the beginnings of a UT heel turn here. Is that something that you, 1, find to be realistic, 2, find to be interesting?
Well, the tease is already there, because at Dangerous Gate, like when Strong Machine J went to go chase after fake Shun, UT was like, what's the deal? That clearly wasn't Shun Skywalker, and has been very frustrated about that. So I could see that if it's it could be tinges of that. It's something where, like, I always think about the Jimmies, about how it felt like that Naoki Tanizaki, before he actually turned, was like teasing turning like 5 times. Like, it was a constant thing. Like, there was like a 1.5 year period where Naoki Tanizaki had beef with everyone in his team. But it's something where I think that we'll probably start to see that with UT, and I think that's something that will pay off down the line with whatever the destination is does UT turn or not? Like, I feel like that is a clear direction that they'll probably try to play into with this Natural Vibes and Z-Brat's feud that has to be heading towards the disbands match.
I love the idea of UT being really tempted by the dark side and then eventually choosing good instead of evil. That just seems like the type of thing that a crowd, whether they're still voice restricted or if it's a normal crowd, that is the type of thing that they would go crazy for. I think UT being sympathetic in the way that he's being played by somebody manipulative like a Shun, like a Hyo, like an SB Kento, and then eventually siding back with his friends, I think is something that would come across super well. So I hope this is a path they explore. I personally don't see heel UT being a thing immediately, nor in the short term, nor really in the long term. But I've been wrong before, so we'll see.
He hasn't really turned heel or have had a heel run outside of Millennials. So he's someone that they could always say, like, hey, you want to go heel? You've never really done that. And, like, that's an option, but I am leaning more towards your opinion that, like, there's, like, enough natural sympathy there, and with, like, shows coming up and where they're coming up with, like, I think that they're going to be able to really, like, play up with that UT, and it's something that when we talk about, like, unit landscape with Kagetora out for a couple months and Yamato going aside, maybe going to see the guy that he idolized growing up as a kid, that you can see him in the crowd. Maybe that's something we can see with him and Dragon Kid coming up over the next, like, month or so.
I'm sure they've got Nagoya booked in November or December, and I look, if it were up to me, I would not be turning UT heel right before a Nagoya show. So I think he'll stay babyface, and I do love the idea of a UT Dragon Kid pairing.
Yeah, it's just something that, like, just, like, looking at how things are shaking out, I'm like, okay, like, Yamato and Dragon Kid, like, you can keep them together, but, you know, Dragon Kid and UT, you haven't really kind of played on that in a while, so that's, like, my inclination, at least. But we have one other match that's announced, and it's a match that's specifically for you and I. It is the pseudo M3K team of Ishinahashi and Mochizuki Jr. teaming up against Ryu Fuda and Kaito Nagano, who are just, like, kind of bursting out now, and it's return of Fuda after he missed Dangerous Gate with issues relating to his previously broken sternum.
I don't need to do a whole thing on the young guys again, that has been covered, but holy shit, am I excited about this match. You're exactly right. This is Case and Mike core. I understand not everybody is super into this, but you could book KZ versus Jesus Christ on this show, and I'm going to be more excited about this tag match than whatever Jesus is going to do in the main event. This is my style of wrestling. These are my guys. Mochizuki Jr. and Ishin feel so hot right now, and they feel like they are both coming into their own, which is crazy because, you know, Ishin is 1 year in and Mochizuki Jr. is 4 months into his career. And I'm sitting here going like, wow, these guys have entered a new stage, which is just insane to think about. They're going to be good. We know what those guys are going to bring to the table. What excites me here is not really even Nagano, who I think is going to be excellent and is going to fit like a glove getting his ass kicked in this match, because he is going to take an absolute throttling for Mochizuki Jr. and Ishinahashi. It's going to be really interesting to see what Fuda brings to the table. He's been up and down since his debut. He got choked out, eaten alive by Akuda and Korakuen. It really seemed to derail his momentum. He had the broken sternum. He came back. Were you on the same page as me that I really liked the way he looked when he returned from injury?
Yeah, no, I thought Fuda looked like $1,000,000, and he needed to differentiate himself as a kickboxer, I guess, as a style, and he found, like, his lane about doing, like, oh, I'm going to use the ropes and make it be that I'm, like, super precise now because I can get different angles. I really like the changes that he made when he came back from injury.
Yeah, I'm with you there, and it seemed like right when he was starting to pick up some momentum, and I fear this will be the story of his career, but right when he started to pick up some momentum, he got hurt again, and he missed out on Dangerous Gate, and it's a bummer, but I think he's going to come back here, and this is a match that is going to be less about the Mochizuki Jr. and Ishinahashi pairing, less about Nagano making his presence felt in Tokyo yet again. It is going to be about Ryu Fuda and what can he do, given that, you know, he debuted 2 months after Ishinahashi, but Ishin is so far ahead of him, and Mochizuki Jr. debuted 6 months after him, and Mochizuki Jr. is so far ahead of him. What can Fuda do to cement his place on the card? And I think this match will tell us a lot about the direction of him specifically going forward. I am really excited about this match. For as great as the old guy versus young guy tags are, I would love to see any of these young guys against Mochizuki and Fuji, or, as we kind of talked about last week, all the grumpy old guys have kind of gone by the wayside, but there's still possibilities there. But the young guy versus young guy tag, I am fired up about this.
And it's something that, this will be the first M3K appearance for Ishin Hashi in front of the Korakuen crowd, and how much they've kind of built Tokyo around the Hashi and Mochizuki feud. So I think I get where you're going at, saying how much this match is about Ryofuda, and I completely agree. This is gut check time for him. It's something where, if you're up and down constantly, it's hard to kind of gain your footing afterwards, and we've seen that it's taken time with people like Strong Machine J, UT, people like that. It takes a long time to kind of establish that if you get that kind of rep. So the ability, if he gets like a strong performance here, it starts stringing together some consistency. Like that's what we really mean when we talk about Fuda, where he's at now. We need to see consistency, and he needs to have consistency for himself, I would say. Or, Nagano's right there. There's Kodo. There's, Nishikawa's in Mexico. But the class after him is being debuted already. Like, and as you said, Mochizuki Jr. 4 months in, that he's his junior and he's doing that. So yeah, we really kind of want to see that. Nagano and like these stakes, I'm intrigued by with how he, as a wrestler, like with his size, how much they've made it like, oh, drop kicks. What's going to happen with people that, Mochizuki Jr. and Ishinahashi aren't protected. So what's it going to be like if Nagano gets like a stretch of control? Like, I'm intrigued in that aspect about that from Nagano, to see him like there's not a comfort zone in this kind of match. And I find that incredibly compelling.
Well, it's interesting that on the last Kobe show, for as dry and uneventful as that was, they made the point of having Ishin pin Nagano in that opening match. And that said, okay, he's still, he might not be able to step up to a Susumu or a Dragon Kid or a Benke and take them out, but he is clearly above the new crop of rookies at this point. So I expect Ishin to pin Nagano yet again. And luckily, I think in Nagano's sake, this is a situation where, yes, he's in there with young guys, but it's young guys who carry themselves with such a level of charisma and danger that he can work underneath comfortably. And I don't see a scenario, unless he's, hitting big move, and then getting stopped via a kick to the head, more than likely. I don't see a scenario in which he's going to be in control in this match. If that happens, I think that's going to be super interesting to watch, but I don't anticipate it.
No, that's fair. And that's a good point about Ishin getting that pin over him with that new choke slam. Other things on this card, we have the roster announced. It's no big surprises, knowing that that there's the West Coast Pro show happening this weekend and like that. So, but no Benke on the show. Actually, no, Benke is on the show. So he's gonna have a pretty busy 72 hours. Tokyo travel, and then wrestle in California Saturday night. But notably, and this is following up on our discussion from last week, and something that for the person that we kind of wanted to wait and see how things were announced, Eita has been announced for Tokyo show. Nothing, he wasn't on any tours, that he wasn't booked on them before Dangerous Gate, and I think we're kind of I haven't heard anything. I think we might get any announcement one way or another about Eita, but I think like it's worth following up and stating that Eita is on the show. So everything that we said last week in mind, what are your thoughts now that Eita is just booked on the show?
I expect Eita going forward to be in Kobe, to be in Tokyo, to be in Osaka, and to be on the big shows. I think we're getting a glimpse into his future schedule, big announcement or not, and I'm okay with that. I'm really intrigued to see what he does on these shows. Again, I wish he was in Dragongate full time and just in a unit. I wish he was a Dragongate guy yet again, but if he's going to be in and out the way he is, kind of one foot in each camp, I think the part-time schedule is favorable for everybody.
Yeah, and it's just something that like if he did not show up, if he was not announced for the show, that would have been more of a surprise for me than him being announced for this. Like it's something though that knowing that there will be a show in Kobe this weekend, or no, Kyoto, a show in Kyoto this weekend, that will be the interesting thing because I don't think they've announced anything for Kyoto yet, or at least rosters for it.
I want to make one more point about Korakuen before we move on, sort of circling back to the rookies, and that this is going to be the third month in a row, August, September, and now October, where Mochizuki Jr. and Ishin Ihashi have had an announced match before the show begins. And although it's purely speculative, there's no way to ever get hard data on this. If this show does 1,000 plus, I'll say, because anything under 1,000 is a disappointment. That's just the scale that Dragongate works on. September did 1,100. And if this show does that again or more, we really have to look at Mochizuki Jr. and Ishin Ihashi being Korakuen-specific draws. Do you think that's a fair assessment?
Yeah, no, I think that, especially if you look at how Mochizuki Jr., since debuting in June, has been highlighted every single month in Korakuen, and keeping in mind the fact that both of these guys are Tokyo-based, like, and not far from Korakuen Hall. So, yeah, I do think that they are starting to develop into, I don't know if I would say, like, a company-wide draw, but I think that we're starting to see evidence, at least with Ishin and Mochizuki Jr., that there is a faith here about them in this building. And I think that that's just patently obvious if you look at how they've been booked over the last few months. It would make sense.
If this is the building that draws the hardcore fan, they are going to be into this story. And again, we'll delete the tapes Lucha Underground style if this show draws 750 and we'll just move on. But I don't expect this show to do under 1,000. And I think at some point, just given data, just given reasoning, you have to look to those two guys as I think there are people buying some tickets to see them.
Well, I mean, look at when they did the fathers and sons tag match. Like, there were the whole entire front row, hard camp side, wearing Ishin Riki t-shirts, like Ishin family t-shirts. So yeah, like I think there are people at this point, and I think that was some of the strategy. So it's something though about like the hardcores I didn't necessarily think about as much, but I think you're right about that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm looking forward to the show. I think it's going to be very fun. I'm into anything Natural Vibes and Z-Brats related, and that rookie stuff is extremely my shit.
Absolutely. Support for Open the Voice Gate this week comes to us by Hellofresh. With Hellofresh, you get farm fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your doorstep. Skip trips to the grocery store and count on Hellofresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. And in case we can have our pumpkin spice and eat it too, for a rotating selection of fall-inspired items from HelloFresh Market. From brunch kits to a fall dessert board, you'll find everything you need for all of your favorite fall occasions, such as tailgating, Oktoberfest, and more. And in case, like for me specifically, I do like having a little bit more of like I don't know if it's comfort food, but I'm not like a soups person, but I look at HelloFresh and they have stuff like the chicken ramen and a shoyu style broth. I'm like, oh, that is definitely me getting into fall season. I feel like that I peak and thrive in fall, and HelloFresh is helping me to do so.
I hate this time of the year. It makes me extremely sad. It makes me extremely uncomfortable. But the good news is I can eat my feelings with HelloFresh. When they're offering me meals like the one-pan shrimp tortellini, when they're delivering to my doorstep grilled onion cheeseburgers, among other things, I'm going, okay, hold on. All of a sudden, this temperature change isn't that bad. I can stay inside, lock the doors, and eat away whatever invasive thoughts I'm having, and it's all thanks to our friends at HelloFresh.
I just saw that they have something that is lunchbox with herb ricotta. We have reached the point that they are doing full-on fancy adult Lunchables of HelloFresh. I am
the highest compliment a meal kit can receive.
No. I like that is the kind of thing that like I like look at this. I'm like, on our Thursdays, our Saturdays and Sundays now. I mean, like there's a lot of things competing for us here, but like for college football Saturdays, I would love to get into some sourdough, cucumber, mandarins, grapes, nuts, and seeds. And I'm looking at this dip. I think it's tzatziki dip. Like that. Like that's the kind of stuff you're able to get through HelloFresh, and it's exciting to see what they are doing for the fall season. And how do you get in on HelloFresh? Well, you go to hellofresh.com/VOW65. That's VOW65, and use code VOW65 for 65% off plus free shipping. That is hellofresh.com/VOW65 and use code VOW65 for 65% off plus free shipping. HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit.
How's your football team doing, Mike?
Well, I didn't have to watch football this Saturday, kids. So better. I'm glad you're asking me today and not last week.
You're glad I'm asking you post hurricane. You couldn't watch your football team because your city was under attack.
No. They had last week off. No, the problem was 2 weeks ago.
That's right. Okay. All right.
2 weeks ago, they suffered one of the most ignoble Miami defeats, which they do this a lot. They do this a lot, case where they just like go and it's like, hey, Middle Tennessee State, we're going to give you the game of a lifetime, and we're doing this at home, and have fun with that. So you know what, I'm doing pretty okay with that. The Rams, as someone who does not even check on NFL at all, Rams doing okay?
No, I wanted to walk into traffic last night watching their game. I don't know what is wrong with this team. This is a very interesting NFL season in which the quality of games has been excellent, but the Rams and my fantasy football team are both horrible. And I was thinking last night, I was like, we're 4 weeks into NFL season. I am not having fun. I have hated this season so much. Every Sunday is stressful. I don't like it at all. I don't know what's wrong with this team. We roster like 7 running backs and none of them can run. Stafford is playing like he's on the Lions again. It is really unpleasant. And I haven't talked to Joe Lanza about the Rams this year. I don't know if he's more bullish on them than I am, but this is a playoff team who will lose in the first round is my current feeling.
You see, like, it's something that, like, emotionally, like, I got out of NFL a long time ago. Like, as a Chargers fan, like, I had that sinking feeling every year, like, no matter what. And it was like, we have one of the best running backs in generation, a decent quarterback. Why is it this way? Why is that this way? And especially, like, I had to imagine so deflating after the Super Bowl too, like going out 2-2 to start the year.
You know, the Super Bowl was like a big thing for me because even the Dodgers won a World Series a few years ago, but it was the COVID year, and that World Series wasn't even fun because I had just watched them lose to the Astros and the Red Sox, and I was like, I'm at a point in baseball where I care more about the White Sox than I do the Dodgers, just because I'm kind of sick of the Dodgers. Like, they won 110 games, and I'm just like, ugh, they're gonna lose in the National League Championship Series, so who cares? But the Rams Super Bowl was the first time that, like, a team that I love, that I was invested in, my team had won a championship, and it was great. And I was hoping they were going to double down this year, but they're not playing like that right now.
Yeah, no, it's interesting how, like, college football and NFL are two completely different things at this point, because I very much, like, came in this year going like, hey, Miami, like, I don't think we're going to, like, go be a playoff team, but we should be in the ACC championship, and ACC play has not even started. And I've told my girlfriend, it's like, I warned her, it's like, Miami games, like, I will be a ball of stress for about 4 hours, and usually it's a miserable experience for me. You don't have to sit through me and watch this, but there is a point each year where Miami starts suffering dumb losses where I smarten up and decide I have better things to do with my Saturday, and we might have reached that before conference play this year,
which is a remarkable feat. Do you like watching sports with other people?
Yeah. I'm not like a solo sports watcher. Like, I'm not like someone like this. I think over the last, like, years of, like, COVID, living by myself, working from home before COVID, like, I got kind of used to, like, that kind of thing. But, like, whenever, like, I visit family or, like, friends, like, we'll, like, have on games and, like, I'll watch with them. It is something, though, if a team or, like, a driver I am is, like, in a game, though, then it completely changes it. Like, I will put on some action tomorrow and I will have a great time because it's just, like, out there and like this. But if Miami is in a game, So Miami played Texas A&M 3 weeks ago, right? Like, and Miami was coming in looking pretty good, and they really like some bad calls and a couple bad throws, and Miami should have won that game there. I did not sit down for about 2.5 hours while I was at a place where I could sit down because I just had to stand in pace. That's the kind of sports fan I am.
I see. That's interesting. I don't picture you as that guy at all, because I ask because I have a really hard time watching sports with people. I am very much a solo watcher and somebody who doesn't like when people get animated watching sports. I was not expecting you to be as intense. I almost felt like we could get along and just like, I'm going to watch the game very closely. I'm going to be very into it, but I'm not going to be weird about it. But it
I'm
seems
not
like
weird.
it seems like you're a little weird about it.
It's something that I feel less anxious if I'm standing. Like, I'll have full conversations and we could like discuss the breakdown of a pass coverage. Like, I could totally do that. It's just I gotta be standing up if Miami's playing. I gotta move around.
Understandable. All right, where are we at on this show? I lost track.
We lost track pretty much when we hit record this week. Excursion stuff. We had Black Label Pro and Deadlock that has happened over the last few weeks. I know that we both were kind of trying to piece together some stuff to watch for this week. We didn't necessarily get to as much stuff as we wanted to, but this week we got to see more of the Shun Skywalker and SB Kento on the American Indies case. Deadlock, they had a match with Jack Evans, originally supposed to have Andrew Everett and be a tag, became a 3-way, and then also Shun Skywalker was in Black Label Pro's Turbo Graphs 24 and faced the Space Monkey, and then was in a 3-way dance.
Can I tell you something, Mike?
What's up?
I did not watch this Black Label Pro show. There are so many hours in the day. I have had such a busy few weeks with my shoot job, and when it came time, as I got home today from just an ungodly stressful day where I got home and I thought it was like 6 o'clock, and I realized, oh no, it's 3 p.m. I sucked out all of my energy from noon to 2 today. God put me on this earth for a finite amount of time, and I can't spend that time watching Black Label Pro. If they had booked Shun versus like Jake something or not the Space Monkey, I would have given it a shot. But please tell me everything about this Black Label Pro show, because I did not watch it.
Well, I only watched Shun's matches because I've watched enough Black Label Pro in my life to know that they don't value my time. So I only watched the Shun stuff. The Space Monkey match, Space Monkey is not a bad wrestler at all.
No, no beef with the Space Monkey. Let me be clear, because talented wrestler, actually. The Space Monkey realistically could be listening to this podcast. No beef with the Space Monkey, but Shun Skywalker's in America for 2 months, and Space Monkey wasn't on my Cody-like list of Shun Skywalker matches.
And it's something that, like, yeah, it's like playing to the audience. So that Shun worked, like, the one thing I'll say is, like, Shun is someone who thrives just working these indie shows. Like, I think that the stuff that the crowd work that we've seen him do both in Mexico and on other stuff, like, he's thriving with it there. So he worked like like he's much bigger than Space Monkey. Like I think it's very clear how they could work the match. It's just it's interesting, like with Black Label Pro. Presentation, commentary, just everything about it, and you just watch it and you're like, okay, Shun versus Space Monkey, this match was a good match. The Space Monkey gimmick is just one of those things that, and just like the whole entire package, and it's nothing against Space Monkey, but it's just the whole entire package of everything there. I'm like, Shun Skywalker feels so much more above this than doing this, especially like when you looked at, like, I don't know. Like, I don't promote shows, and I would not promote with my own money. But I look at like these crowds, and I'm just like, okay, well, obviously something is not right here. And it just was. There was a sheen of that. But I mean, Shun looked good. Shun like working with the crowd. No one knows what the SSW or the blaster is, and that's kind of annoying. But people don't do their homework, then that's what you get.
It's interesting in the way that Dragongate has guys working for Black Label Pro and MLW, and Black Label Pro is always the company where it's one really good wrestler against one really bad wrestler, and you think, why would you book this? There's so many better options, whereas MLW is the promotion that will book two really good guys against each other, and the match will never be as good as you want it to be, which raises the question. I know the world of MLW is on tape delay, but when are we getting any of this Dragongate footage? I haven't even seen La Estrella stuff from June, let alone SB Kento versus Davey Richards, which I really want to see.
Yeah, I have no idea. Like, went looking, and like they have like clips teasing, but they don't have a date or anything like that. I'm intrigued by Shin and Myron Reed. So Myron Reed was a part of the three-way match, and the little bit of Shin and Myron Reed that they had there, I'm intrigued by what that middleweight match was like. Like, I know that you're higher on Myron Reed than I am, but I was like, okay, I definitely see these two guys having chemistry, and I can't believe that we're more enthused about what's happening in MLW. The world of MLW never stops. And
just on tape delay.
Just on tape delay. I mean, it's paused. It's not stopped. It's on pause. All Court has to do is hit play.
I'm very glad to hear that Shun versus Myron Reed seems to have worked out, because although the match that match is not going to come to fruition, but that was a match that I lobbied certain promoters to book. So I'm glad to hear that my instincts are once again correct.
Hey, somehow between the two of us, I somehow shadow booked Shun and GCW, and you figured out MLW storylines.
And you're the one, correct, that reached out to Circle 6 Wrestling and booked La Estrella versus Jake Christ. That was your doing, right?
I mean, he is in the most canceled Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu class, so why not go to the second most canceled promotion that's on IWTV?
Like, La Estrella is going to come back to America as like come back to Japan rather, as like a hard right conservative. Like, he is getting undeniably the worst American experience ever. And I hope he's having a good time. He's like,
he seems like he's having the best time.
Everybody that I've talked to that has had contact with Estrella is like, all this dude wants to do is wrestle. He just wants to get booked, and he's having a really good time abroad. But then you look at his Instagram and you see what he's doing, and you're like, oh my God. Like, I think he's like, he's trying to get his COVID vaccine taken out of him with the people he's hanging out with. Like, who knows what he thinks now?
I mean, it just, I just like have the thought in my mind. It's like, okay, 10 years from now, La Estrella, let's see what that's going to result in, you know?
Yeah.
10 years from now, like him and Dragongate, what's going to happen with that 10 years from now? Like if he's able to start bringing people in here, I don't think like 50-year-old Jake Crest needs to show up in Dragongate ever, but he might have that idea. And you know what? It's good to have some ideas, not that one, but some ideas.
If the Dragongate office is listening, a thumbs up to Radioactivo and a thumbs down to Jake Christ. That is my professional opinion, if I may say so myself.
Really going out on a ledge there, kids.
Look, I've never laced up a pair of boots before, but I'm going to give the thumbs down to Jake Christ and Dragongate.
So Deadlock, they had this Z-Brats versus kind of like Jack Evans and Andrew Everett, like a really kind of cool match. Everett pulled out, made it into a three-way. They did a backstage kind of like segment. It was something that was very DGUSA core, where Shun Skywalker was trying to explain to SB Kento that they were opponents now, and that carried on into the match where SB Kento never really got what a three-way match was, but he seemed like he was having the time of his life figuring it out.
I thought the presentation here was really strong. This is about the best that I would hope for from a Deadlock Pro type company. And I will, not in terms of quality, but just in terms of the little bit that I know about the promotion, I would lump them in, and tell me if this is unfair, I would lump them into the same category as a Black Label Pro or a Game Changer or one of these indies that is a modern indie. They have that vibe, they have that presentation, even if Deadlock overall is a little bit cleaner. I liked that the announcers didn't get themselves into murky waters here. They understood that Shun and SB Kento were big deals. They presented them as such, but we weren't getting history lessons from a Wikipedia page. You know, they didn't go out of their depth here. They seemed delightfully surprised by these guys as well as the audience, because it didn't really seem like anybody knew who SB Kento and Shun Skywalker were either. I would expect a little bit more from your West Coast Pro Defy Prestige crew. Those announcers, I want them to be a little bit more dialed into who these guys are and what they do. But for what my interpretation of what Deadlock is, I was very happy with all of this.
The one thing I'll say, like with that, the caveat of you should know what the guy's finish is called. If you're calling a match, you should know what the guy's finish is called.
That's fair. That's fair.
But the rest of that, yeah, no, like I think Deadlock Pro, like, and I don't really want to like completely lump them in with your GCWs and Black Label Pros, but there is a common thread there that you kind of see that production looks solid. Everything looked a lot more professionally done than others of their ilk. I think that's fair to say. I mean, maybe outside of like if like Black Label Pro has IWTV people there and IWTV people aren't letting the Black Label Pro people get too involved with
it. Yeah, Deadlock is fine. I'm going to go and watch that Violence. What's the name of the Kevin Koo, Dom Guarini team? Violence Unlimited or whatever? I'm going to go watch.
Violence is Forever.
Yeah, I'm going to go watch them versus the Workhorsemen on that show. I have no reason to believe that's going to be a bad match.
Oh, I'll say this. There was enough there that I know that was in Raleigh, and Raleigh is a hike for me, but if it was something that, like, out of the stuff that runs in the area, like GCW, the stuff that does tapings in Atlanta, stuff that does tapings in Charlotte, if they were running in, like, the Western Carolinas, or if they were running somehow in Greenville, like, it definitely would be. This is something I'm like, okay, like, it's modern, but does not feel like just like the obnoxious sheen that you get sometimes from GCW and those of that ilk. I was kind of impressed.
So overall, Deadlock far more satisfying than Black Label Pro?
Yeah, no, for sure. But I think that they were beforehand. So just kind of confirmed our biases there.
For sure. All right. What about the upcoming schedule? A lot of Dragongate in USA coming up, and Dragongate in Mexico too, which I'm honestly more excited about.
Yeah, so coming up that we have, there's just like Circle 6, yes, that is happening. As well, we have coming up the West Coast Pro Brian Keith versus Benke, the only Benke date outside of Japan other than when he worked in Singapore in his entire career, is going to be that match. Like, he has his visa, and who knows what's up with like people trying to book Benke. I
have no info on the Benke thing. I've asked multiple people what the deal with this West Coast Pro booking is, and they're all like, we don't know. I don't know if he's just working this show and coming back. I don't know if he's going to pop up on indies later. I don't know how long he's in America. I have no info. He is just randomly on this West Coast Pro show that I am looking forward to because it's West Coast Pro, and I think they do a great job.
Yeah, and then as well this week in GCW, they are in they're in Atlantic City, right, this weekend?
Yes. Yeah, so that is Yamato and Shun on those shows.
Yeah, I mean, I just was trying to pull up the match cards for those two shows. I know that Yamato has already been announced for what's it? It wasn't what's this? I'm blanking on this. I'm scrolling. Why don't you already have a pin up top what your show cards are? I feel
why would GCW make something easy to find? That would be a professional operation.
Yeah, why would GCW have any of their cards, anything visible like this? This is, I would
it's
love
Shun versus Speedball this weekend, isn't it?
It is, yeah, because it's Yamato versus Gresham in 2 weeks.
Ugh. Okay, well, can't win them all. Look,
I'm just glad
there's a lot of divisiveness in the AEW locker room, but boy, was Tony Khan right about Jonathan Gresham. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, so it is. On Saturday, it is Nick Wayne versus Shun Skywalker, and it's Deppen. Deppen was the name I was drawing a blank on versus Yamato.
Okay, all right, I'm into those. Deppen will work hard. I am intrigued to see what that match will look like.
And I would say that Deppen probably meshes very well with what Yamato would want to do, too.
Yeah, it's been a decade since Yamato's wrestled in America, so I have no idea what his level of enthusiasm is, what he plans on doing, how hard he plans on working, but Deppen will work hard, so I'm intrigued by that.
Yeah, and then Shun Skywalker versus Nick Wayne. I mean, first of all, everyone's welcome for my booking decision. This is it made clear sense. You have one of the top 10 wrestlers in the world coming in against one of the hottest rookies, wrestlers under the age of 20, and we've seen Shun Skywalker have these matches before, and I think that's something that with like Nick Wayne, this could be a really big highlight match, and it's something that it's going to frustrate me a little bit. I'll be honest. The fact that everyone's like, I can't imagine Yamato is actually this good. You got to wrestle Nick Wayne, when all the while it's like, no, it's sorry, Shun Skywalker's wrestling Nick Wayne. No, it's Shun Skywalker is this amazing.
And then they got Shun versus a Commander at some point, which I'm really into as well.
Yep, in Detroit.
Yeah, that's good stuff. As much as I love making fun of GCW, because I do think largely what they do sucks, they have done a very good job with the Dragongate guys, so more power to them.
Yeah, no, that is booked as well as one can hope, I would say. Will you be watching, however, on Friday as GCW streams War Ready from earlier today on the Fight Network?
No, I'm not. No, I'm this Friday they're doing that?
Yep, they're doing it this Friday. I didn't know if you needed to check in on Strong Hearts again.
No, I'm going on a date on Friday. I'm not watching GCW. I'm not doing that. There's no scenario in which I'm sitting at home on a Friday, rubbing my hands together, firing up a GCW show. I will be pirating the Dragongate matches after the fact because I don't want to give Brett money. I'm not. What's the situation? War Room? What's the show called?
It's War Ready, and Strong Hearts aren't on it. So yeah, though they're really proud about selling out Shinkiba First Ring. They're very proud about selling out Shinkiba.
You know what? I would
ring.
be too. I can't. If I was a US indie promoter and I sold out Shinkiba First Ring, I would also be psyched about that. So I can't make fun of them. But I guess. Okay, so this isn't even the good show, because there's the GCW Dead on Arrival that has Shima Lindemann and T-Hawk versus Janela, Jordan Oliver, and Nick Wayne, and that I would like to watch. I will not be watching the Jun Kasai versus Effie death match on that show. I would rather not do that. I was going to say something really mean, but I'll just stop it. I would rather not watch Jun Kasai versus Effie.
Hey, GCW and Freedoms drew 820 this week.
Christ.
Freedoms
so that is
draw surprisingly well in Korakuen, especially when they base stuff around Jun Kasai. Surprisingly well, I would say.
It's why I'm intrigued by the GLEAT show that is going to be on the 7th, because they've got Kaito Ishida's debut and Jun Kasai in the main event. And if that show does another shitty 700 fans, then I want GLEAT to succeed, because I'm really worried about the overall state of the industry right now in Japan. But if that show does 700, then, that says all we need to know about GLEAT.
Yep, I would say so about that too. Case, to close out this week, you had an idea you pitched to me yesterday that I've spreadsheets devoted to this now. So
real quick, I want to also note that the Mas Lucha Supremo first round matchups on October 7th are this week. And I don't know off the top of my head, and Cubs don't get mad at me, I don't know if this is a one-night tournament or if just the first round matchups are this week, but Shun Skywalker is in this. It is Charlie Manson versus Puma King, Arrow Boy versus Commander, Jack Evans versus Shun Skywalker, and Tonali versus Dragon Lee. There is a very realistic chance we get Shun versus Dragon Lee, which I am ecstatic about.
Yeah, no, that would be really, really sick. You asked me earlier this week, we might be getting Shun versus Dragon Lee, and I thought you were talking about a Triple Mania and not this show.
I mean, that'd be cool too, but I think it's just going to be on an indie show.
Yeah. No, it just so happens about that. Yeah, no, and then Hanya, a very mysterious person who may or may not be Takuma Fujiwara, already has a mask match coming up.
It's crazy. It is.
I wonder.
He's so good. He is so good.
Yeah,
I'm pumped. It's him versus Radioactiva. That's gonna fucking rock. I hope that is a genuinely great match.
I really, especially it's interesting that they have kind of paired him with Radioactivo. This is the second match that that Shun Skywalker has had with Jack Evans in a period of 2 weeks. Interesting.
It's family. It's family. Jack Evans. Yes, he's marketing himself as the only guy that got kicked out of the Dragongate dojo, but ultimately he's family.
If that's how he's choosing to market himself, then he needs to talk about his former gymnastics partner before that.
What assignment did I give you this week, Mike? Let's land this plane.
Yeah, let's land this plane. So Case pitched that we're doing mixtapes, but we're doing match of the month mixtapes, and we didn't really have any framework with this case. Is there anything else that you wanted me to keep in mind when I made my list this week?
No, we needed something to talk about this week, and although I doubt there is anybody that listens to this podcast and the Axe to Grind podcast, I am a big fan of what they do, and they do a lot of fun games on their show, and they're a show that talks about hardcore punk music, and this seemed like something they might do. So I asked Mike to pick his favorite match from every month on the calendar, January to December, and I did the same, and hopefully this is a segment devoted to guys remembering dudes.
Yeah, so I kind of took the mixtape idea to heart. So I didn't pick like the best match in each month, but I picked like ones that I think that when you take my list of 12, you'll get an accurate representation of the Dragons.
I think that's great. I would like to hear your January.
So my January match is from January 16th, 2014. It is Masato Yoshino versus Misaki Mochizuki. Misaki Mochizuki's 20th anniversary match for the Open the Dreamgate title.
I think we will line up in 2 months, and January is one of them. I had a few other matches down here. Milano Collection versus Ryo Saito from 2005. BB Hulk and BB Hulk and Shingo versus Speed Muscle from 2008. And BB Hulk and Kai versus Jason Lee and Coach Minoura from 2021. All matches I considered, but realistically, there are very few matches that I've ever seen that are better than Mochizuki versus Yoshino from January 16th of 2014. This is a Desert Island pick. This is a, hey, if you're new to Dragongate, watch this pick. This is just an all-timer between two of the all-time best.
Yeah, it just was something that, like, I guess, like, there is the 2018 Mochizuki versus KZ match that you could put in here for that, but for me, like, I identify this match with January very visibly. February, KS, what'd you have for February?
I went with not a KZ match here. I think that is the a very safe way to go. KZ has a number of matches that you could point to from this month. That would be a safe pick, but I went to a personal favorite of mine, probably the closest to a 5-star match that I have without being an actual 5-star match, and that is February 4th, 2016, Losing Unit disbands 3-way 12-man tag team elimination match, Berserk of Kotoka, Naruki Doi, Shingo Takagi, and Yamato, defeating Akira Tozawa, Masato Yoshino, Sachihoko Boy, and T-Hawk of Monster Express, and the Dia Hearts quartet of Big R Shimizu, Dragon Kid, KZ, and Masaki Mochizuki. So I guess KZ is in that match. His February is unbelievable.
Yeah, no, like, he's the last person in Dia Hearts in that match.
Yes, yeah, that was an early like, oh, what does the future hold for KZ match? Obviously, the year before 2015, he has that Champion Game Osaka match with Akira Tozawa for the Brave Gate belt, which is really when we start to see his transformation. But here was a very specifically focused, okay, KZ is now more important than he was before this match type of match. That's remarkable. I tried to not pick a KZ match, and he's still in this one.
Well, I picked a match with a similar vibe. I did not pick that one. It was between this match and this, and yours. Mine is the 7-on-7. I'm not going to list all 14 wrestlers in this match. Elimination, no loser revives in this one. Blood Warriors versus Junction 3. Loser must disband match. The end of the Blood Warriors and Junction 3 feud. I just wanted to have something that was a match that they only attempted once and they have never done since. And this one told so many stories. You have the turn on Shima at the end. You have basically setting up like, okay, we're now exiting this era of this one-on-one feud. And now we are fully like positioning ourselves into the Big Six era, really coming out of this. And in a lot of ways, I could have picked something else from the Blood Warriors Junction 3 feud, but I felt like that this kind of, in a lot of ways, displays nearly everything and has all the major characters of the feud here. It was just like a fantastic way to kind of end this, and sadly, we'll never have the full 77-minute version of this match.
I was just about to say, holy grail that really doesn't exist is the full version of this match, I would love to see it. But alas, this is a great pick. This is a match that I haven't watched in five or 6 years. I mean, it has been a really long time since I've revisited this, and I would like to at some point, because obviously all of the Blood Warriors versus Junction 3 stuff delivers, but this is a very special match.
Yeah, and it just is something that in a lot of ways just kind of like encapsulated an era for me. For March, I have kind of encapsulating an era in a way. It was a short era, but it's from March 6, 2019, Pac versus Shun Skywalker.
Why this match? That's a very interesting pick.
I wanted to have a Pac match on here. Like, again, mixtape idea. And Shun Skywalker, I could have very easily have picked like the Shun Skywalker, like, okay, he had that title defense versus Kazuma Sakamoto or something like this, and just had a whole lot of Shun Skywalker on this one. But this was kind of the match that really like propelled Shun into what he would come back as in 2020, and then Pac being what I feel like is like the best character of a champion in the last 20 years in this. And of course, it's Osaka number 2. Shun goes flying a lot, and Pac is a bastard.
You know, there's a lot of good picks in March. This was a pretty loaded month. February and March, particularly a lot of high-end matches here. Kenta and Taiji Ishimori versus Shingo Takagi and BB Hulk on my short list here. A number of Champion Gate matches, Mochizuki versus Benke, the aforementioned Pac versus Shun Skywalker, Doi versus Susumu, and Shun versus Ashida, all on my honorable mention list. But Mike, I went in a similar direction to you. I wanted a Pac match as well, and I went Pac versus Shima from 2012, 3-4-12. One of my favorite Dreamgate matches of all time, and a demonstration of, although it's not the best singles match of either man's career, it is just such an impressive match. This is one of those where, for all of the faults that people claim this style has, for as many people that just can't get into Dragongate for whatever it is, I really question people that could watch Pac versus Shima and not just lose their minds over how good these guys are.
Yeah, and like Pac's 2012, like leading up until he departed, was like really like they were positioning him that if he did not leave, Ricochet took his position in 2014, but it would have happened the next year, I think.
Well, look at the urgency in which they put the belt on him when he came back. I mean, Pac was, you're exactly right. He was in line for everything Ricochet had. It just took him a lot longer to get there.
Yeah. What was your April match?
A few different options here. I think the Kness retirement match from this year has to be mentioned. That is a match that I don't know if you and I have slept on it, but I think we are weirdly the low people on that match. So that was one that I thought about. Shingo versus Dragon Kid from King of Gate 2010. Another one that I thought about. Genki Horoguchi versus Shima from 2003, El Numero Uno, was going to be my pick. And then right before we started recording, I said, wait a minute. One of my favorite matches of all time took place in April of 2019 to be exact. Super Shisa versus UT from Prime Zone.
And that is one of the places where we've matched up.
Yeah, this is, if you ask Super Shisa, it's become a legendary match overseas. And thank you to our friend for putting that in his ear. But this is as good as it gets if you are a Yave pervert like myself, Mike, or Angelico.
Yeah, no, it is phenomenal what they were doing in that small theater before COVID. And it just was, I almost put in the Jimmy's, the original Jimmy's versus Amigo tag. That was my runner-up for this month, but it's one of my favorite matches in the history of the promotion. It's just a very cool match that, like, you could not put that match at Kobe World. You could not put that match in Korakuen. That match really needed to be in a very intimate setting, and that's like, weirdly enough, when we talk about like departures, like weirdly the one that like hurts for me in like a particular way is Shisa, just because like these like special like little like 10-minute technical exhibitions you would have on a monthly basis with people.
If Shisa made tape, it was something that I watch everything. I've watched everything on the network this year, minus the 2 Dead or Alive Road 2 shows in Kyoto, just because of timing. It just was not feasible for me this year. And I've watched 75-80% of what's hit YouTube. When a Shisa match made TV, I sat down and I focused and I watched it. He is one of my favorite wrestlers to watch of all time. He is working, and Mike, you can speak to this a little bit. He is working the sleaziest, grimiest, bottom of the barrel Japanese indie shows right now. And I really wish there was footage of it, because as long as he continues to wrestle, I'm going to want to see what he looks like in the ring. And I'm so bummed that, he no longer has a home in Dragongate, even if, long term it's for the best, because he's not the wrestler that he once was. I still enjoy watching him more than just about anybody else.
Case, if you feel comfortable about using twit casting, I can get you some Shisa.
I literally don't. I don't understand twit casting, because remember,
the action shows, yeah.
Or was it like OWE Japan was running on twit casting, and we had people going like, "Hey, there's like good matches on these shows. How do I watch them?" And we were like, "We don't fucking know. Like, I can't help you. These shows are impossible to find."
But like the weird thing with the OWE ones, like they were OWE and name only, and they quickly they started calling them action shows, and they first were like a art gallery that Shima found in Osaka that would let him put up a ring and he would record it. It would stream from his iPad. It was very just.
That's right.
It's something that like I talk about liking the dark arts. Case I have a Steam Deck. What game did it? Was I really focused on making sure I could play on my Steam Deck? Bubsy from the Sega Genesis. Why is that? Because I can. Shima did these shows because he could. If you're someone who like wanted to watch those shows, that's all power to you. But I mean, we all have our dark arts we love. But
maybe
I can get you into some real dark arts if you really want to watch some Super Shisa. It also has some men's Tejo in there.
I'm good on that. I'm good on prime men's Tejo, let alone 2022 men's Tejo. Maybe we should be nicer to Gleet, because it's easy to forget that 2 years ago Shima was running art galleries, and now it's like, well, he only did 700 in Korakuen. It's like, well, he did 700 in Korakuen. Let's all fucking relax, okay? Shima's doing okay.
I mean, he was always going to do okay.
He stays winning. He's like Jeff Jarrett.
Yeah. For May, I had a couple options with May. This was the one I changed up last. I decided to go from May 5th, 2016, the Dead or Alive cage match, Yamato versus Shingo Takagi versus Naruki Doi versus Cyber Kong versus Naoki Tanizaki versus Kotoka. I just felt like this is I with like my mixtape theme, like I needed to have a Dragon Gate cage match. It was probably going to be in the May slot, and this was the best one they've ever done.
It's the best cage match they've ever done. It is my number 2 pick here. If I am going for a match, and by the way, if you haven't seen that Dead or Alive cage match from 2016, stop this podcast, go watch it. It's essential viewing. It's
on the network.
It is really, that was, I mean, I've said it before. I think that run from Dead or Alive 2016, everything that's laid out there, that was such a phenomenal King of Gate tournament that then led into that Kobe World show, which weirdly isn't even a great Kobe World, but I just think we talked about this a few months ago. I think Yamato versus Shingo on that show is perfectly done. That was a really special time in Dragongate, and I don't think we've really had a run like that ever since, where it felt so massive and so many people were into the promotion. That's the summer of Eita. Not only him versus Tozawa twice, but him versus Susumu and him versus Liger falling into that time period too. There were just so many things happening that made that point in time really special, and that cage match really kicks it all off. But if I am going mixtape logic, if I'm going with a personal favorite, if I'm going with a match that means something to me, I'm going to May 9th, 2014. I'm going Akira Tozawa versus T-Hawk, which headlined that King of Gate Korakuen Hall show. That was the match. I had been a very casual fan of Dragongate at that point for about 6 months. I knew the main eventers. I knew the general storylines that were going on. I was watching the guys that I knew and that I liked. And watching that show in full, headline with T-Hawk versus Tozawa, that was the show that made me go, okay, this is my new thing. And that match is a good reminder of how great Akira Tozawa was, and a good reminder of what could have been with T-Hawk.
Yeah, Akira Tozawa in May, because my backup match was Akira Tozawa versus Eita from King of Gate 2016.
That's funny, because on my list is Tozawa versus Shingo from 2015, which I thought was like, those guys had the really famous Kobe World match, but I always feel like that King of Gate 2015 match gets slept on for whatever reason. That is every bit as good as the World match.
Yeah, no, it's kind of remarkable. What did you have for June as well?
June, I went back quite a ways. I went to 2005, June 22nd, 2005 to be exact. The Shima, Don Fuji, Magnitude Kishiwada, Masato Yoshino, Naruki Doi, and Shingo Takagi versus Anthony W. Mori, BB Hulk, Dragon Kid, Genki Horoguchi, Naoki Tanizaki, and a Ryo Saito match. This is the start of Magnitude Kishiwada. This is where he turns heel and joins Blood Generation in the match before, and so they restart the main event as a 12-man tag with Paz Hearts and Doofixer teaming up, and it is pure chaos. There's this match, and then the Triangle Gate stuff that they did at the July 2005 Korakuen Hall show, which, again, not on the network. It's a real bummer. I know consciously I was trying to pick stuff that people could watch. I know they can't with this, but these are sort of the hidden gems of 2005. People talk about Milano versus Saito. They talk about the 2 out of 3 Falls Triangle Gate match. They talk about Kobe World, obviously. But the June 12-man with Magnitude Kishiwada debuting and the subsequent 2 out of 3 Falls July Triangle Gate match are 4 3/4 star tags. They are excellent. They are as good as almost anything in the company that year. And 2005 is one of the best years in company history. So if you can find that match, I highly recommend you watch it.
Yeah, Kishiwada coming in like that. Like I always have a soft spot for the old big boss. So like the way he came in like this, and it was just like chaos is the right way to describe it. Just like the way that, especially like Blood Generation, and then like how Blood Generation will quickly change over the next like 18 months because of Kishiwada. I always thought was kind of cool.
Yeah, it's a great angle because the show was supposed to be headlined by Shima versus Kishiwada in a singles match. At this point, he's Big Boss Magma, and they do a no contest deal. I forget exactly how they get into it, but it leads to, okay, Big Boss Magma is now Magnitude Kishiwada. And this match is only an 8-minute match, but it is 8 minutes of unbridled fury. I mean, there's really nothing. There's nothing in wrestling now. Like, there's not a recent match I can think of that really compares to the way that this comes across. The fury of the wrestlers mixed in with that white hot Korakuen crowd. It's kind of a 1 in a million type match, and I think it's worth mentioning here.
So my June match is from June 4th, 2016. Jimmy Susumu versus Eita. Before I changed, I almost had 2 straight Eita matches. I wanted to celebrate the summer of Eita here, but I like this match more than the Tozawa match. So I went with this one and did the cage match instead. This is just the peak of babyface Eita, like really showing the leading man potential, breaking out like insane moves like the Salamander and the Apocalypse season. This it just was phenomenal stuff. Some of the best babyface junior heavyweight stuff I think I've seen over the last decade and a half, I would say.
I talked about it 2 weeks ago. Eita's the most frustrating wrestler of my lifetime. There's no one there's no one where the gap between enjoyment and frustration is as wide as his. Like, he's just maddening. And it's not his fault that he hasn't done the art that I've projected onto him. But you watch May, June, July of 2016, and it was just like, why hasn't this been his entire career? You know, yes, he can do cool chair spots and he can be this like lazy dickbag heel, but I don't want that. I just want him doing cool lucharesu stuff, and it's such a bummer that hasn't happened.
Yeah. It's something that's like I'm happy he's getting to live his truth and he's doing what he wants to do. But boy, if the right person was in the ear say, actually, trust me, being the babyface is more fulfilling. That, to me, I'm more intrigued by that personally. But we have arbitrated Eita a lot. My July match is from this year. It is easily available on Gaura's YouTube channel. It is from Ultimo 35 from Kobe World Weekend, July 30th, 2022. Shun Skywalker and Diamante versus Jackie Funky Kamei and Jason Lee. It's the best match ever in that building. So, yeah.
It's the best match ever in that building. Now, I know we did a
Dragongate.
Okay. Well, yeah, I don't know of a New Japan match. Like, I know they've had great matches there, but I can't think of like the New Japan and Kobe match.
Yeah.
Okay, that's something I will be looking up after the show. That's a good thought exercise. The best. Okay, so we did a Kobe World Countdown the week before this show where we did our 10 best Kobe World matches, and obviously we didn't know this was down the pipeline. And you would put this at number 1 if you had to redo that list?
I mean, it's a 5-star match. I feel like I'd be dishonest if I didn't have it number 1 now.
I've got that at 5 stars. I've got Pac and Dragon Kid versus Shima and Ricochet at 5 stars from 2011, and then my pick for July, which is Shima, Don Fuji, and Naruki Doi versus oh my goodness, I just forgot who's the Dragongate team in that match? I don't have it down. I just have
2005. Yeah.
It is July 3rd, 2005. It's only one of my favorite matches of all time. And of course, it is Shima, Don Fuji, and Naruki Doi versus Dragon Kid, Genki, Horoguchi, and Ryo Saito, which is just, it's maybe not the best match in Dragongate history, but it is to me what Dragongate is.
It is the best Dragongate match, I would say, in history.
Yes, because I don't have another Dragongate match at 5 stars. I think Final Gate 2017 with KZ, Hulk, and Yamato versus Yoshino, Doi, and Jason Lee is close, but I think the World 2005 match is better.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. August, what do you have for August?
Few different picks here that I could have gone. August, obviously the August 30th 4-way 12-man tag is iconic. The losing unit disbands match, the 2-count finish for the Mad Blanky versus Akatsuki unit disbands match, that is iconic. Eita and Doi, I think, is a match that has aged really well in the sense that I like it a lot in my head. I haven't rewatched it since it happened, but that was on my list. But I am going to go with a match that we talked about when Masato Yoshino was approaching his retirement, of Doi and Yoshino versus Shingo and Dragon Kid from the finals of the 2008 Summer Adventure Tag League. Going kind of dovetailing what we were talking about last week, do I think the core component of Dragongate has changed that much? No. Do I think internally there's a different vision than there was in 2008? No. But to a lot of people, this match is Dragongate, and no matter how compelling SP Kento's character work is, or how intriguing we find Shun Skywalker to be, it's not Doi, Yoshino, Shingo, and Dragon Kid, and so it's never going to be good enough. And this was the peak of those 4 guys doing their thing in the ring together.
It's the stuff that Gabe saw and ran back in the United States.
Yeah, that's the third Dragongate USA show, and that match is so unbelievably good. One of the highlights of Dragongate USA for sure.
Yeah, I did go for tradition here. I did go for the first ever 4-way 6-man tag, Crazy Max versus Do Fixer versus M2K versus Italian Connection from August 30th, 2003, and I didn't have a 3 or 4-way match on this, and I felt like I needed to have one of the hallmarks of it, so I went with that one.
No argument from me. It is there's no other match like it. It is a 5-star match and one of the best I've ever seen.
So I've been trying to have us do snake wraparounds here. I think it's my turn then for September. You could probably guess this case. It is from September 8th, 2002, Absolutamente, Mascara contra Mascara, 2 out of 3 falls, Dragon Kid versus Darkness Dragon. In my opinion, it is the greatest match ever happened in the Dragon System. It is the greatest Apuestas match ever happened in the Dragon System. It is some of the best storytelling to ever happen in a wrestling ring. And if you find the right version of it, you can listen to Bonnie Tyler singing "Holding Out for a Hero."
You know what's crazy is that I didn't even think about this match or Crazy Max versus Italian Connection. My mind went straight to another 2005 match, Shima, Magnitude Kishiwada, and Shingo Takagi versus Misaki Mochizuki, Susumu Yokosuka, and Taka Michinoku, which is a Shingo Takagi showcase, a really good post Michinoku Pro Taka Michinoku match, which there aren't many of, and then you get Shima, Magnitude, Mochi, and Susumu just doing their damn thing. This is another 4 3/4, almost a 5-star match, and I feel like because Taka's involved, tell me if this makes sense. Because Taka's involved, it got more play at the time, but because Taka's not as well thought of now, I think it's a match that people might look at and not be super excited about, but this is like a dream 6-man tag.
Yeah, and Taka's someone that obviously now it's not the case with people departing. He was really tight with the crew then, so there was a lot of Taka stuff there. And this was, I felt like, the best match that he had in Dragongate by far.
By far. Oh my God, by far.
Yeah. And he got to like play off the chemistry of Shima, but it's also like, as you said, this was really like, I'm just trying to go off the top of my head here, Case, and I'm probably wrong. Someone can correct me for once. I will be okay about that. But I think this was either in the lead up to or the departure match for Shingo Takagi before his excursion.
Ooh, that is a good question, because that is no. Well, it's in
or is
the
it when
lead
he
up.
came back?
It's in the lead up to, because you got to remember he works King of Gate that year,
Right.
and has that match with BB Hulk and Korakuen Hall, and then he leaves for excursion in
November. Yeah.
No, well, he leaves in May of 2006, but Shingo's in Japan for all of 2005. So he's got about another
4
8
months.
months in Japan before he leaves for excursion.
Why did I think his excursion started in 2005? Like basically, like as soon as Shima made his appearances in 2015, they were trying to get Shingo out over there.
Well, he and Shima worked that Dragongate Invasion show in Buffalo for Ring of Honor, but then they go straight back to Japan. It's not for a while that he goes back to America.
That makes sense. That just was something that just bounced around my head and I couldn't figure it out there. I'm glad we figured that out on there. Your October pick. October was the toughest month I found. October was difficult.
Yeah, I found April to be the most difficult. But with October, there's a few different options here that I liked. I'm looking at this list now of matches I've got. I've got Mojizuki versus Tozawa from October of 2011 in here. I've got Masato Yoshino versus Yamato from 2013 in here. I will give an honorable mention that I think is worth mentioning, especially because it's timely with what's going on at Korakuen Hall this week. 2014, there was a Dia Hearts versus Monster Express 3-match series. They did the same thing. They did lottery pairings, and then they had 3 singles matches, and it was Shingo versus Dragon Kid, Hulk versus Yoshino, and Tozawa versus Mochizuki. And all of those matches individually are outstanding, especially Tozawa versus Mochizuki. But what I'm going with is the 2011 cage match, Akira Tozawa, BB Hulk, Cyber Kong, Kagetora, Shingo, and Yamato, simply because when I watched this match for the first time, I was still very new to Dragongate, and seeing them throw basically like a rescue ladder into the cage to get Cyber Kong out was just the most creative thing I'd ever seen in a wrestling match at that point, and that really made an impression with me.
That is always the cage match that gets forgotten because it wasn't in May.
Yeah, and it is, other than 2016, it's probably my favorite cage match they've done.
Yeah. And everyone got to learn why Yamato should be careful about his haircuts because of that match.
Yeah. Well, that's Shingo leaves him in the cage, and that would come to fruition 18 months later when Yamato turned on him.
Absolutely. I went with one that really off the beaten path for October. I went with Shingo Takagi versus BB Hulk from October 7th, 2018. Yes, I picked Shingo Takagi's farewell match. And I did that like in the theme, like I wanted to have like a big emotional one. And yeah, Shingo's departure, not at much more subdued than like Tozawa's or like Uha Nation's or anything like that. But I really like there is like something special about Hulk and Tozawa and Takagi. I did not want to pull the DGUSA match that would have counted because it was in October, but I just felt like I needed to have a Shingo and Hulk match, and this was where it made sense here. And yeah, it's not the best one. It's probably one of the worst ones actually, but it just is something that I felt like I needed to have Hulk versus Takagi on this mixtape.
I haven't watched this match since it happened. I don't even know if I thought this match was good in real time or not.
It was, I mean, it was like, because you had Hulk and like all the stuff there. Yeah, it was not. I really should have picked the DGUSA one, but I wanted to stick stuff within USA because Hulk versus Takagi from 2010 is much better than.
I would have gone if I was going to go with a non-Kobe World Hulk versus Shingo match, I would have gone King of Gate 2005, which would be December, but I did not. November, are we ready for November? I can give my November pick here real quick.
Okay.
I'm assuming we're going to be lined up here. Shingo versus Mochizuki from 2015.
Yep, the best Dreamgate match ever.
Yeah, it's I said at the time it was one of the 10 best matches I've ever seen. I think Okada and Omega might have disrupted that take, because I think I would have 2 of their matches in my top 10 at this point. But still, it is as good as professional wrestling can get.
Yeah, and it was tough because I kind of wanted to put Tozawa's farewell match here. The last Big Six match, all of them together in the ring. I feel like there was like some nice symbolism there. If I could have done that.
But that was a that Tozawa show was a bummer. I remember being really sad about that.
Yeah. Well,
He's been gone 6 years.
Yeah, man. I come to terms with that every day. Every day. My favorite wrestler ever. Just can't watch him. I have not seen a match of his. I'll see clips that post on YouTube or on Twitter. I'm just like, whatever. But I've not seen since that like 3-way match with him, Pac, and Buddy Murphy. That's the last match of his I've seen.
Yeah, there was some really good 205 Live stuff. I mean, he has a singles match with Kenta on 205 Live that I thought was awesome, but I've never seen him on the main roster before, nor do I have any desire to do that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't need to touch the poop to know it's poop.
Yeah, amen. What about your December?
December is an interesting one because there's a lot of really good options for December. You could go 12-1 2016, rookies versus vets. If you wanted to go that direction, like that's a vibe I did not pursue on this mixtape. I totally could have. You have RED versus Torimon Generation from 2020. But I went with what I think is someone's best ever singles match from Christmas Day 2011, Final Gate, getting the Dreamgate for the last time and for the longest time single ring in history, Misaki Mochizuki versus Shima.
Really good pick. A match that I have come around on because there was a long time where I was just not into this match for whatever reason. The build was great. It was obviously Blood Warriors versus Junction 3, and then I watched this for the first time and went, that was like 3 1/4. And then I rewatched it about a year and a half ago. I was like, no, that's like a 4.5 star match. It's really, really good.
Yeah, it's something that, of course, the knock on Shima does not have good singles matches, not have like exceptional singles matches, and some of that goes part and parcel with the stereotype of the Dreamgate match that he very much personified for a long time. But him and Mochizuki always had great singles matches. I know that there's the argument that the hair versus hair match was much better in 2000, but there's like this and like the whole thing of Blood Warriors standing tall for one of the few times that is a big heel celebration to end a year. It just rules. What was your match?
I got to go Unit Disbands Torimon Generation versus RED. It is the chalk pick here. I could have gone Hulk versus Shingo from King of Gate or Final Gate 2014. I could have gone with 12-116, the Rookies versus Legends match, but this Unit Disbands match is it's another 5-star match. It's a perfect display of pro wrestling. I can't believe in the absolute depths of COVID, in a bleak existence for humanity, they were able to pull off a match as good as this.
It just was. It's something that, like, now with almost 2 years of retrospect, they had SB Kento Kakuta pen the entire heel side.
Yes, they are operating on a different level than most wrestling companies. They just are.
Yeah, like that's a thing about all the departures and everything that like I like take a step back and I'm going like, wait, they have been preparing for like this day pretty much since 2019, if not beforehand. and that's exactly why they would have a match like this. They knew what they had. They knew what they had, and they knew that they had to get what they had to where that they could lead the company, and that's the world we're in now.
The countdown is on to SB Kento becoming the youngest Grand Slam champion of all time. He's only missing the Dreamgate belt, and he comes back to Japan in 2023, and I think once he comes back to Japan, it could happen at any moment.
I mean, he comes back early 2023. We're talking about Royal Road there. He's going to get every decoration you can get in this company.
Amen, brother. I am delighted for him. I thought he looked great in the Deadlock Pro Show. I look forward to him working Mexico and the U.S. Indies for the next few months, and then he's going to come back to Japan, and he is just going to absolutely crush it. Yeah,
he's going to be a world eater. I think that's all we have for this week. Case, you were a little trepidatious about this. I really enjoy kind of putting this together. It made me think differently about matches than you usually do.
Yeah, obviously, I do this because I want people to send us their list. So please, if you've made it this far in the podcast, sit down, send us your January through December, because I thought it was a very fun exercise. Because again, it made me think about like, oh, that October 2014 Korakuen show with Dia Hearts versus Monster Express. That was really fun. That's a match, 8 years later that I still remember thoroughly devouring when it came out. And there's just a lot of stuff like that. And there's, we didn't really touch like 2009 through 2012 for the most part. We didn't talk about a ton of Toriyama matches. There's a ton here that you can do. So please, if this interested you, please send us a list. I would love to read those.
Absolutely. And you can do that at Open Voice Gate on Twitter, or hit us up in the Voices of Wrestling Discord, either in the Open the Voice Gate channel or in the Dragongate channel. And we can, I'll be interested to see what other thoughts people have. Like, because as you said, like there is like a vibrant thing that like neither of us picked a match from the 1990s, which is a wild thing to think about.
Or 2010. There's a lot of the good years are heavily weighted, and I think it's skewed. Obviously very, very recent and very 2010s heavy. But there's a especially from your longtime Dragon Gate fans, I would love to know what they think of this. So yeah, thank you for indulging me this week.
Absolutely. And that's going to do it for us this week. We're going to have a big show next week. There's Korakuen, there's the Kyoto show, and there's all the excursion stuff happening in case we might need to like figure out how we're going to tackle this off air. But it'll be a big episode next week. And the best way you can support us again is if you go to our Red Circle landing page, click the red box, says sponsor this podcast. And also, if you're thinking about it and you don't want to throw money that way, that's fine. Just go to wherever you find your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, what have you. Give us a 5-star rating review. It helps more people find the show, and we greatly appreciate it. But you can follow us on Twitter at Open Voice Gate. I'm at Fujiheya. Case is at _ in your case. Thanks for listening to Open the Voice Gate. We'll be back next week talking about the world of the Dragon System. Take care.